Greetings. I would like to talk a little bit about the different types of deductive arguments. Instead of doing a series of videos, I'm just going to give a brief look at each of these types. As far as the types, I will give you some questions on the exam, as well as there will be a homework assignment that will be posted, basically asking you to distinguish between deductive and inductive, and give me your reason if you think it's mathematical reason, or argument from definition, or scientific law, etc. But essentially, as far as, going through all these types, going through the types is not as important as it is. Let me stop here for a second. The going through of all the different types is not as important about you being able to say, oh, well, that is this type. The important thing is to be able to tell if it's a deductive or inductive argument. And these types are more to give you some sort of indicator, or give you some idea of, what actually constitutes a deductive argument, what one might look like. And so these aren't necessarily categories or distinctions that are important to memorize or anything, but they're important to sort of have an idea of going, oh, well, typically mathematical arguments or definitions or scientific law or categorical syllogisms, those types of things are typically a type of deductive argument. Now, as far as they go, the first type is mathematical reasoning. Mathematical reasoning is just the idea that, the conclusion is necessarily true, and so the idea here would be that if you are basing upon some mathematical principle, like this thing is takes up, like the ball takes up 20 square feet, and the box for it is only 7 square feet, it's not going to fit inside the box. That is kind of dependent upon a mathematical concept. Now, just because you have math or numbers, if it's statistics, that doesn't make it deductive. And so don't be fooled by the fact that just because there is something that involves some mathematics that we in fact can consider that deductive. But as far as it goes, if it's based upon, it's relying upon a mathematical principle, then we would consider it deductive. Typically, one of the best examples of this might be like engineers. Usually we would say that their process to arrive at conclusions in engineering are deductive. That, if they say, well, this will take this kind of pressure, and this bolt's only designed to handle this kind, and the pressures will be like this and this, and so it will fail or it will work, that we would most likely put those, if it's scientific and if all the premises are true, then it would work. Now, sometimes things fail, and that may be that, in fact, what we had was that, for example, the bolt wasn't strong enough, or the forces that they calculated were there. But if all the forces they calculated were there, then we could know necessarily that it would work. Arguments from definition. Arguments from definition essentially are where you have an argument that relies upon terminology to create it. Now, terminology is created, is at some point defined. And as long as we use those terms and we are relying upon those terms, then we can make it a deductive argument. Bill is a bachelor, therefore he's not married. A mammal has hair, gives birth to its young live, feeds them milk, things like that. Those would be, so if you're using saying based upon that term, or you're using things based upon even perhaps arguments that that perhaps like in ethics we might even get into, if we can apply this term, then we can apply it to a larger category, and then we can follow it definitely. So anytime you're kind of, the whole crux of the argument depends upon the definition, that would be a deductive. And then scientific laws. Once again, these are codified. They function oftentimes like definitions, and basically where these are things where you have some scientific rule, and because of it you're able to say, well, that rule applies here, and as we add in these numbers and apply this rule, we know that this will happen. And that would be another case of a scientific law. All right, I'm going to stop here, and I'll come back to the next set. That way I keep this video somewhat short.